Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We'll provide you with a brief COVID update, as well as I'll be available after for questions you might have on other topics. I want to begin, as we always do, by acknowledging we're on Treaty 1 territory in the traditional homeland of the Métis. Thanks, everybody, for joining us here today. Just reflecting on some of the numbers that we're learning from the provincial government today. 31 new cases in the city of Winnipeg, 2 additional deaths of Winnipeggers, which to date leaves us with 645 individuals that we've lost over the last year to COVID-19 within the city of Winnipeg. I know the cases to date have exceeded 32,500. This is getting in the ballpark of IGF field. Just to put that in perspective, a lot of Manitobans have had to deal with COVID-19 over the last year. 155 cases in Winnipeg over the past 7 days, and test positivity of 2.7%. These numbers should remind us all that we are still in the battle against COVID. We need to continue to remain vigilant in our efforts to protect our own health and the health of our community. Jay will have details to update shortly, but I want to begin today's press conference by offering my deepest condolences to the family and friends of the 645 Winnipeggers we've lost since the World Health Organization's pandemic declaration a year ago today. You know, with the constant updates of COVID-19 related data from our provincial government, it is easy to lose sight of the fact that all of these numbers represent real people in our community. These are our neighbors, these are our friends, family members, and loved ones. The Government of Canada has designated today, March 11th, as a national day of observance to commemorate all those who have lost their lives and the impacts of COVID-19. The flags on all City of Winnipeg buildings and facilities, where possible, are lowered to half-mast from sunrise to sunset today. A temporary memorial has commenced today at the Forks. That will run until Sunday night. Candles have been placed now in front of a dimmed Winnipeg sign in memory of each Winnipegger we've lost to COVID-19 over the last year. The Canadian Museum for Human Rights will also be lighting the Tower of Hope blue in tribute to our community's healthcare heroes. I want to thank the Canadian Museum for Human Rights for doing that. As a result of the provincial public health orders, many Winnipeggers were restricted from being by the side of their loved ones in their final days. And it's absolutely heartbreaking to think how that's impacted so many people in our community. I hope this small gesture of support will provide some measure of solace to those who have lost loved ones, and I hope each of them know that Winnipeggers share in the sorrow that they feel. It's been a year that's changed the lives of everyone on the planet, and when you take a step back to reflect, it's quite something that we as humans are all experiencing this unique challenge together. Over the course of the year, we've learned a lot about ourselves and about each other. And while the pandemic has affected every facet of our lives, we've seen how Winnipeggers have responded with the care and compassion that our community is known for. I know the pandemic has added stress and anxiety to everyone's lives. The impact has been felt by our essential workers and our healthcare heroes, and I want to reiterate my gratitude and the gratitude of my council colleagues and of all Winnipeggers for the work they continue to do on behalf of Winnipeggers in the face of greater risk of exposure to COVID-19. At the City of Winnipeg, our efforts have been guided by the leadership of Assistant Chief Jay Shaw, the city's emergency management leader, and his team. I'm sporting a new wardrobe today to just pay respect to our emergency operations team. We're really fortunate to have dedicated professionals like Jay who care deeply about the well-being of our residents. And I want you to know that your work that you continue to lead is so deeply appreciated by all Winnipeggers and by our council. March 5th marked the 1-year anniversary of the activation of our Emergency Operations Centre, and the EOC has remained open throughout the year, and I want Winnipeggers to know it will continue to be open for the foreseeable future. The last thing I'll just touch on in my opening remarks relates to vaccines. As members of the media and the public will know, since early December, I've been actively pressing the provincial government to share their plans for when our essential workers and our most vulnerable can expect to get their vaccines. I'm talking specifically about essential workers like members of the Winnipeg Police Service, transit operators, among other groups, and specifically with respect to vulnerable Winnipeggers, unsheltered Winnipeggers, and those Winnipeggers affected by homelessness. We've seen in other provinces that there are plans to provide vaccines to police. We've seen in other communities and other provinces vulnerable residents receiving their vaccines, and yet we still wait to even learn when we can expect to see vaccines being made available to some of our most vulnerable essential workers, but also Winnipeggers in our community. It really is unacceptable that we still don't know what the timing will be. Either the province doesn't know or won't share those plans with us, and I'll continue to press on their behalf to get an indication from our provincial government when our essential workers and our most vulnerable can expect to get their vaccines. I also want to just speak briefly about vaccine hesitancy. I want to encourage all Winnipeggers, when you are eligible to get your vaccine, please go get your vaccine. Roll up your arm. This is a way in which you can not only protect your own health, but you can help protect the health of our community and our economy. By getting your vaccine, that is one way in which Winnipeggers can help us all get back to a new normal and gather with our friends and families like we used to. And so I have and continue to reach out to both provincial and federal governments to see how we can work to support the efforts to communicate the importance of getting vaccines. And I want to just take this opportunity to remind all Winnipeggers that when you're eligible, please roll up your sleeve and get your vaccine at the first opportunity. I'm hoping our province and our provincial government can be a leader in Canada. I'm hoping that as a result of their efforts, supported by municipal governments and the federal government, that we will have the biggest per capita buy-in of those choosing to get their vaccine in Canada. And that would be something that we could all celebrate, because that's going to help us all get back to the new norm much quicker. With that, I'll turn it up over to Jay, and then we're both available to answer your questions on these and other COVID topics.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon. My name is Jay Shaw. I'm the Assistant Chief of Emergency Management for the City of Winnipeg. As has been mentioned, today marks 1 year since the World Health Organization officially declared COVID-19 as a pandemic. Our team in the City of Winnipeg Emergency Operations Center was already busy preparing when the pandemic was declared. We officially activated the Emergency Operations Center on March 5th, 2020, which brought together all city departments to prepare and coordinate efforts. The EOC has remained in operations ever since that date, which is the longest activation in the city's history. An added challenge for the EOC was having to transition from operating in person to remotely. Since that initial activation, our EOC has sent out over 25,000 emails. Our 311 call center has fielded over 17,000 inquiries related to COVID-19. And the mayor and I have been together for more than 50 media availabilities. And as this pandemic goes on, we have continued to learn and adapt to each new challenge that has been thrown our way. Responding to COVID-19 has really been a team effort, and I am grateful to everyone who has stepped up along the way. And while we may see a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel, we know we're not out of the woods yet. We will continue to be diligent to continue to adapt our plans, ensuring the safety of our employees and residents and our first priority. And with that, I would like to advise that the City of Winnipeg is changing the holds pickup service at our libraries and reopening select arenas on Monday, March 15th. Library customers will be able to enter Winnipeg Public Library branches to pick up their holds and return their borrowed items only. All branches will be offering the expanded service, with the exception of the Cornish Library, which is undergoing renovations, and the River Heights Library, which will permanently close on Saturday at 5 p.m. to accommodate the move to the Bill and Helen Norrie Library. On Monday, March 15th, the Iroquois Arena, Century Arena, Terry Sawchuk Arena, and River East Arena will open at 25% capacity for spring casual ice. At this point, we are continuing with the recall of aquatic staff and are conducting lifeguarding recertification and site-specific training for those staff members. We are working to have our indoor pools reopened by March 29th for an aquatic sports groups, lane swimming, aquatic fitness classes, and limited public swimming with 25% capacity limits. We hope to have firm reopening dates and public schedules to formally announce this soon. We will now take questions from the media. Thank you.
Start with Danton from CTV.
Yeah, hi there, Danton from CTV. I'm wondering if you're able to comment on this $500 administrative fee for patio permits this year.
Yeah, sure. I can take that one, and glad you're able to join us today. As you know, the typical, or you may not know, the typical patio fees can go as high as $2,300 for each of the restaurants. Last year, the fees were waived, and this year the Public Service was able to significantly discount those rates down from what is typically as high as $2,300 to the $500 fee. In addition to that, the city, and I want to thank the Public Service for doing this, the city last year created a new streamlined process by which restaurants could apply. It's reduced red tape and made it a lot easier. So I want to just first acknowledge those efforts. I know I've spoken with our finance chair, Councillor Scott Gillingham. He's indicated that this is something he wants to see further work done on tomorrow at finance, and you may want to reach out to Councillor Gillingham to get his thoughts on that.
So then I guess just as a follow-up then, I guess what was the decision-making process in not waiving the fee this year, given the fact that we're still in the pandemic, we're still seeing those cases within the city?
Well, I think the Public Service worked within their delegated authority to do what they could. I'm pleased that they did significantly discount the rate, but there may be some more work that we're able to do as elected officials, and appreciate the leadership of our finance chair to engage with members of council and I on this topic, and would encourage you to perhaps reach out to him to have thoughts or get his thoughts on this a little bit further. But he's indicated an interest in trying to show some more support to the restaurants that I know are hurting right now.
Thank you.
Oh, James from the Winnipeg Sun.
Good afternoon. Question for Jay. Is there any worry or indication the new COVID variants found in Manitoba are more harmful or vaccine resistant?
Great question. Short answer, yes. The variants basically have proven so far to be effective against some of the vaccines, not all, but the variants are more contagious, and new research is coming out all the time. The variants are definitely a risk to all Manitobans and all Winnipeggers, and that is why we must still maintain our fundamentals, and we still have to keep attacking this virus with strong hand washing, wearing a mask, social distancing, and doing those things. Even though we're starting to get vaccines out there, these variants are dangerous, and we have to make sure that we are, especially when indoors, we have to make sure that we are social distancing and doing everything that we can. Because these variants, as we've seen in other countries, and we've even seen here in Canada, can have exponential growth really quickly. And we want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can in the city to protect our essential services. And we want to make sure that Winnipeggers are getting the message out that while there is a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel with vaccines, we're not there yet, and the vaccines, the variants are dangerous.
Thank you.
Did you have a follow-up, James?
Nope.
You're good?
I have a political question for later.
Okay, perfect. Joyanne from the Free Press.
Hi. On the COVID questions here, maybe just to refresh my memory, I feel like the March 15th libraries update, this is you reminding us of that. I feel like we've heard this piece before. Is that fair?
No, March 15th is now what we're doing is we're tweaking the way you can do your holds pickups so that you can actually go inside the building and get it. Before it was more of a curbside pickup in most locations. So this is now that you can actually enter in. We're starting that phased approach, Joyanne, to be able to get everything reopened with all of our safety precautions. You know, the variants are still out there, COVID's still out there, so we are starting that process. So now you're going to be able to go inside the building, pick up your holds pickups, and get in and out with some good customer service and get those books. And then also be able to return the books. We've got a lot of books out right now, so we'll be able to get all that done as soon as possible. So that starts coming up next week.
Okay. And then just on just for the mayor, what you said on vaccines earlier, I made a note that you called it unacceptable that the province hasn't responded on when city police, transit workers, and vulnerable folks could get the vaccine. Can you sort of elaborate on that in terms
Yeah.
of
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Sorry, John.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've been pressing the province privately as well as publicly since early December. What we've been really looking for is an indication of when essential workers like police and transit workers, among others, can expect to get the vaccine. We'd also like to know when some of our most vulnerable Winnipeggers can expect to receive the vaccine. You know, in other provinces, you know, Ontario, for instance, I know in Toronto, they're providing vaccines now for unsheltered and homeless individuals. And so we've simply asked for an indication of when they can expect, you know, where in their priorities are they. And so we also know law enforcement in other jurisdictions are being provided with, you know, or at least there's an indication from the provincial government when they can expect to receive their vaccine. Our members of the Winnipeg Police Service are nowhere to be seen in the plans, and so either you know, they're not in their vaccine rollout plans, or they're not sharing them, which I think is unacceptable. You know, I'll just say, you know, members of Winnipeg Police Service are answering difficult, dangerous calls, and are at greater exposures affected by homelessness, and they're particularly vulnerable, and so we've been pressing to just get an indication from the province when they can expect to get their vaccines, and that information has yet to be shared.
Jonas from City TV.
Good afternoon, folks. Mr. Mayor, I just want to follow up with you on this call for vaccines. As far as the province has said, the vaccine task force has said, is they're rolling out based on the outcomes that have been impacted. I'm not going to get into the unsheltered population because I think that is an issue that's certainly impacting them. But have we had any serious outcomes amongst Winnipeg police, I guess, that would require them to have a more priority?
We're not pressing and we're not challenging the priority sequencing. We're simply asking for information of where they are in their phasing in plans. The absence of members of the Winnipeg Police Service is concerning, but the epidemiology and that information that you're requesting is in the hands of the provincial government. We're simply asking them to disclose to us and the public where in their phasing in members of the Winnipeg Police Service, for example, would find themselves, and that information hasn't been either that information hasn't been determined by the province, or it hasn't, you know, they haven't been willing to share it. In terms of the impacts to the police service, I would encourage you to reach out to the Winnipeg Police Service. They may be able to answer that question for you.
Thank you for that, sir. And I guess just as a follow-up, I mean, you're looking at, kind of a limited supply to start. I mean, is this not just maybe a matter of patience on all ends to kind of just give this time, or are you looking for something quicker?
Well, I'm looking for, I'm looking to see a plan that's made public that shows that they are part of their rollout plans. And obviously where they rank in the priority sequencing is something that then stakeholders could provide their thoughts to the provincial government. But we're not even at that point where we could have a discussion with the provincial government about where members of the Winnipeg Police Service or unsheltered or homeless Winnipeggers are in the provincial plans. The reality is that that hasn't been shared, and that's what we've been pressing for. We've just been saying, let us know where our essential workers, like Winnipeg Police Service members, are, and where and when unsheltered and homeless Winnipeggers can expect to get their vaccine. That basic information hasn't been shared. So, I mean, I'm doing what I can to press on their behalf.
Danton from CTV.
I have no other questions for COVID.
Perfect, thank you. Joyanne from the Free Press.
And just to be clear, you're not saying that the province has given any, have they responded at all? Have they said simply that they haven't decided on those vaccine priorities yet, or have they just not responded at all?
There has been dialogue, but they haven't shared where our essential workers, like members of the Winnipeg Police Service, where unsheltered and homeless Winnipeggers are in their vaccine distribution plans. That information has not been made available. Ideally, that information should be made available publicly, because there's a lot of people who want to know where they will be in their vaccine rollout plans. It's the absence of that information being disclosed. That's something we've been pressing since early December. So this is not a new topic. We continue to press, and the weeks continue to roll on, and we still don't have an indication of where they would be in their vaccine rollout plans. When we see other provinces able to share those kinds of plans, and we see, at least I can point to Toronto as an example, where unsheltered and homeless are being vaccinated, that's concerning, is that we can't even just get an indication of where they are in the province's plans, and it's the absence that's concerning.
Okay, that's it for me for COVID ones.
Okay, last, Jonas, do you have any further COVID questions?
I'm good on this, guys. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. We'll let Jay go, and
Thanks,
then
Jay.
we'll
Thank you.
switch.
So,
give us 1 second.
Yeah, while Jay is leaving, I'll just let members of the media know obviously the Winnipeg sign and the candles that are placed in front of it right now won't be highly visible until after hours. But I would just take this opportunity to encourage Winnipeggers, if you can safely go down to the Forks, just to take a moment and to reflect and have a moment of silence. I'd encourage Winnipeggers to do that over the coming evenings. The candles will be lit, but obviously less visible during the daytime until Sunday night. And so hopefully folks can go down and just take a moment to honor the 645 individuals that we've lost in our community over the last year. Maybe what I'll do is, if we shift into other topics, I'll begin with just one quick update. I want to provide you with an update on the negotiations for a collective agreement with UFFW. The UFFW filed for binding arbitration in the timelines set out in the legislation. The city objected to the appointment of a board as the parties were still in negotiations. Last week, Minister Scott Fielding proceeded on the union's application and advised the parties of its intention to appoint a board. We're cooperating with the minister. The city and the union continue to talk and work towards a new collective agreement. And I have to say, this is disappointing action at this time by Minister Scott Fielding, since binding arbitration is typically not favorable to the interests of taxpayers. Open to questions on this or other topics that you might have.
Just a reminder that this is open scrum format, so please ask questions when ready.
Mr. Mayor, James at the Sun here.
And James?
Yeah, good afternoon. The Kapyong Barracks redevelopment master plan came out today, I believe, and I'm wondering if you can just speak about the economic benefits of this project going forward.
Yeah, I mean, this is a project that I've had dialogue with Treaty 1 chiefs as well as Canada Lands Company for several years. I've recently met with, virtually at least, with Canada Lands Company, and I'm expecting to meet in the coming days, if not in the coming week, with Treaty 1 representatives. You know, what I want to see is the former Kapyong Barracks is an opportunity to unlock investment opportunity in a key piece of real estate in the city. And so I'm one who is supportive of Indigenous economic development zones. We have supported the zone at 1075 Portage Avenue, building on the previous zone that the city of Winnipeg has historically had. And you know, it's you know, I've also been briefed by Canada Lands Company on the kind of the master plan and the idea that they have for their lands. And it's an exciting opportunity for economic development in our city. And so we obviously will continue to work with the parties involved to see how we can support that investment in our community.
Great, and just as a follow-up, my understanding is that there are municipal development service agreements in lieu of municipal taxes. And I'm just wondering if there's, if there's ever been a downside to that or an upside.
Well, you'll know historically the province of Manitoba would provide some financial assistance in respect to those servicing agreements. There has been dialogue with our officials and Treaty 1, and there will be ongoing at the appropriate time. So I'm looking forward to hearing more from the Treaty 1 chiefs and organization going forward to see how we can work collaboratively with them. But yeah, I will just say that this is a significant piece of real estate. It's been it hasn't been doing too much for the city of Winnipeg for well over a decade. And I, for one, would like to see some development on those lands, and I'd like to work with our Indigenous partners on realizing and unlocking those investments in our community. And so we've seen Indigenous economic development zones pay dividends for everyone. And obviously there will be the need for dialogue and negotiations on a servicing agreement, and I'm looking forward to supporting those in due course as we move forward.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
Mr. Mayor, Danton Unger here from CTV News Winnipeg. Yesterday we learned about a memo from Winnipeg Police Chief Danny Smythe to members in which he agrees to work with the union to have an external review done on the service about low morale within the service. I'm wondering if you can comment about this. Have you spoken with the chief at all about this topic, and what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I haven't spoken with the chief in the last day, and certainly about that decision. But I think where the chief of police has been, he has certainly, maybe I'll start by just saying I want to take the opportunity to thank members of the Winnipeg Police Service for the work that they do. It is difficult and it is dangerous work, and each of the members of the Winnipeg Police Service need to know that their efforts are deeply appreciated, and the efforts and sacrifices that members of their family make as well. I have a family member who serves in a law enforcement agency, and I know that the stress that's caused when you enter policing and that is felt by family members. And so this has been a very difficult year for all of our essential workers, including those in law enforcement. And I want to encourage Winnipeggers to take every opportunity to let members of the Winnipeg Police Service know that we appreciate their efforts. I know members of our community will certainly have views on police budgets. I know there are some that want to, are pushing for defunding and even the abolition of the police service. Those debates will happen, but let's always try to let members of the police service know that we appreciate their efforts. I think there is a role for many civic leaders to work collaboratively in a manner that enhances the morale of the Winnipeg Police Service. Obviously, I have always appreciated the chief's willingness to speak openly and candid about matters, for example, of systemic racism within the police service. I would like to see that same level of leadership demonstrated by the head of the Winnipeg Police Association, who to date refuses to even acknowledge systemic racism in the union. And so there's a role for everybody to play. And I think that the more leaders can step up and try to be part of the solution and not just criticize, the better our employees will be.
In terms of this this review specifically, then, is this something that you would support and like to see done within the service?
Yeah, I mean, operational decisions are made by the police service. Given the chief has made the decision to proceed, I certainly don't see any harm. I know that there's workplace cultural assessments being undertaken in other departments, including the Winnipeg Fire and Paramedic Service. I haven't had the details of what this review is going to look like, so I'm not in a position to answer specifics about it. But I will just add that I know issues of community engagement and morale are top of mind for our chair of the Winnipeg Police Services Board and members of the police service. And I want to thank Councillor Marcus Chambers for his leadership. He's been providing I think a very strong voice in that important position since his appointment some time ago.
Thank you.
It's just open scrum, so if you guys good?
No, I do have more. I just was looking at my notes for a sec there.
No.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about downtown safety
Sure.
in that strategy that's been in the works since 2018. Do you believe that Winnipeg's downtown is now safer than when we started out on that strategy, on that work?
That's a pretty open-ended question, Joyanne. I think the level of coordination and collaboration among stakeholders has certainly increased. You would need to look at the most recent crime stats to see some objective data in terms of some of our overall crime stats. When we're dealing with public safety, we always have to keep in mind the reality and the perception, and both are important. They're both important, that real and perceived safety is there and in all corners of our city, including in our downtown. The downtown safety strategy is something that we've been implementing for some time to try to make the improvements that we all want in our community. The Downtown Community Safety Partnership is also something that Council has supported, working with stakeholders, including, I might add, the province of Manitoba, who's helped fund it recently with a substantive investment of $5 million. Of course, the Connect team is a visible team among other teams that the Downtown Community Safety Partnership is currently deploying in our downtown. One of the ways in which we help make improvements to our downtown is just have more people living downtown, and we have more people choosing to invest in downtown, more people living in downtown than ever before in our history. And of course, the Artis Reed development in downtown Winnipeg, right at the heart of our city near Portage and Main, is going to add 400 more units. We have the Market Lands development, which is looking at adding even more residents on top of other investments like True North Square and others in our downtown. And so I've had the opportunity to live in other downtowns, and having more people out on the street 24/7 is usually good for dealing with certainly perceptions of crime. And, we'll continue to look for ways in which we can support that. But I think there's also, the Bloomberg Harvard initiative is also intended to ensure that we are deploying the right resources at the right time. I mean, quite often when the systems of other governments, like the provincial government, are falling short on the outcomes that we need in our community, that safety net is the 911 service. And we have 3 deployable deployment options. We have fire, paramedic, and police. And for many calls, there really does need to be a 4th dispatchable option. And that's what the Bloomberg Harvard initiative is actively looking at, is how can we look at getting the right resources deployed at the right time for individuals to attend to their needs. It's going to help them. It's also going to help the broader community. So there's a lot of work ongoing.
Yeah, and with it looks like a lot of the initiatives within the downtown safety strategy are set to wrap up this year. Do any of them continue once the implementation is completed, or are they all pilots that are going to expire and be done?
Yeah, the work is absolutely going to continue. It's just it'll be a question, of course, in due course about what will continue. But yeah, no, we've got more work to do, and this council, and I have no doubt future councils, will continue to focus on safety throughout our city, including in our downtown.
And do you know what you would like to see continue? Like, I heard from a couple of people that they think the Downtown Community Safety Partnership is one of the best initiatives that came out of this. Is that going to carry on, or does that end by the end of this year too?
I'd like to see it continue, Joyanne. I think it's, and it's, I mean, in fairness, it's just getting ramped up right now, but it's really doing what many have talked about for decades. How do we engage the private sector, the public sector, multiple levels of government working collaboratively together so that we can have better outcomes? And I'm really proud of the work that's ongoing there, and I want to acknowledge and thank the work of many people. One person who's been doing a lot of work at the city is Michael Jack. I know Mark Chipman. I've had numerous conversations with Mr. Chipman. He's doing a lot of work to try to help lend a hand to our overall collective efforts, and of course the work of our downtown biz. Kate has been doing some just amazing work. Everybody's working more collaboratively now than I've seen in the last 7 years, and I'm encouraged by the level of collaboration and dialogue. And then, of course, the new teams. I'm mentioning the Connect team because they're one of the more visible teams. They're already making an impact, trying to better connect people to the resources that they need. I think it's a compassionate way to deal with individuals who unfortunately are falling through the systems in place by other levels of government.
So you're saying still more work to do, but I mean, do you feel like people feel safer? Do you feel like we're hitting challenges still all the time that prevents that from happening?
Yeah, I'd rather answer that question with more objective data. I mean, it's going to be subjective on who you speak with. The reality is not everybody feels safe all the time in areas of our city, including downtown. And until we reach the day where everybody can say 100% of the time they always feel fine, we have more work to do. And I want Winnipeggers to know this has been a key priority of mine and council for many years. We've put a lot of time, attention, and dollars into it, and we're really focused on outcomes. And that work needs to continue. So you're referencing a report, and I'll be obviously reviewing, and I know council will have some more work to do in due course.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Any other questions?
You know what, maybe I'll throw one more in. Arbitration, do you know when that begins? Do you have dates for that for UFFW?
No, the last update I received, Joyanne, is that the dates haven't been set. There's a process of the selection of the arbitrator, but we're cooperating with that while ongoing negotiations and dialogue with the union are certainly being sought. And so, the preference is negotiated settlement. Binding arbitration historically does not end well for taxpayers, and that's why the decision by Minister Scott Fielding is disappointing, given that the parties were still actively negotiating. Look, there's no secret. Alex Forrest and Minister Fielding have been friends and political allies for many years. It's just disappointing that the negotiations weren't allowed to continue for further.
Okay, and elaborate maybe a little bit on not ending well for taxpayers. You're saying it tends to result in higher wage hikes, or what are you referring to there?
Yeah, I mean, if you look back historically at binding arbitration, the preference for the employer, the preference for taxpayers is always a negotiated settlement. I think it's ultimately better for both parties, but taxpayers have paid on the chin in the past when binding arbitration has been utilized. And my concern is that this will be costly, and we won't be able to affect the changes in the collective agreement that we'd like as a result of the action initiated by Minister Scott Fielding. It's his right as Minister of Finance to make the decision he's made, but the city objected to the appointment of a board since the parties were still in negotiations.
Right. So, but specifically, like, it's not good for taxpayers because it usually is higher wage hikes, or because
the general wage increase, the overall cost to taxpayers has historically not been favorable to taxpayers when binding arbitration has been utilized. And so obviously disappointed that at this time the minister took the action that he took.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Joyanne. We're good otherwise? Okay. Have a good afternoon, everybody. Thank you.